The thing is that, okay, so to be fair, I think that some people have a real fear of asking for more money because they fear how it might make them look.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I once had a boss who, looking back, was, man, violating all kinds of HR rules. But I had asked for a raise, and I can't remember exactly how he said it, but it was something along the lines of like, well, do you need the money? I was like, and I was so abashed, so ashamed. I was like, just incredibly embarrassed. And looking back, not only am I like, that man should have been reported to the Department of Labor, but also like, yes, I fucking needed the money. Like, I needed the money to live and pay rent and do adult things. So if you're ever in a situation where you feel as though your reputation or perception will be compromised by advocating for your salary, you should not be working with those people.
Right,
That's like a toxic work environment.
Right.
And it was interesting. I don't know. Did you read through that spreadsheet of all the different salaries?
I did.
What is your take? Like, give me your takes.
I'm trying to remember. Like, I felt like... Here's the thing. It's also been a while since I was in media, so I actually had kind of forgotten what was like a reasonable amount of money to make for that job.
Yeah.
And I will say I was surprised at how many like 6-figure positions I saw.
Yeah, well, so again, for context, this is an anonymous Google spreadsheet where all different people working in mostly magazines, digital media, newspapers, couple trade publications were listing their title. A lot of them listed also like gender, race, sexuality, those kind of stats, and then they listed what they made. And again, I think this is something that should be done in every industry, but I was fascinated about it from the perspective of like within a publication, there seemed to be just wild disparity amongst two people who had the same position. I know that there are a lot of industries where that's much more standardized, where if you have a position, you make a certain amount of money. And I think, as you mentioned, when you're in television, I guess because it's so heavily unionized, you know roughly what a person's going to be making. And what I think is the most dangerous part about that is if I'm working at magazine A and I'm making, I don't know, $105,000 a year, and I saw on that list that someone who does the exact same work is making $55,000 a year, I am completely disincentivized from talking to them about it.
Right.
Like, and so I wonder, outside of, unionizing, which is not available to a lot of people, at least not immediately, how have you managed to open up the conversation about money with people that you maybe never did before?
I mean, I just started saying numbers and hoping that they say numbers back at you.
It's scary.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm also, something that I'm finding more relevant is understanding where people are at. For like, if we're going to go on a trip, it's helpful to me to understand where you're at. So I'm suggesting things that make sense for both of us. Yes. Or like if we're going to dinner, there are friends who I know make a lot of money. And so a place that I'll suggest, I'm not worried or having to think about, is that going to be a burden for them? Right. Versus other friends, I'm not going to suggest a super expensive restaurant because I don't want to put them in that position where they're paying $100 for a meal that they can't necessarily afford or don't want to spend $100 on.
But how do you know that unless there's some level
how
of
do you know? Yeah, exactly. And so I feel like those conversations for me have been like, I want everyone to be comfortable. And if I'm suggesting things, I don't want people to feel like they have to, explain why they can or can't do something. And so if I have an idea of where everyone's at, then moving forward with things, you can just be cognizant of that.